Erica, how are you?
I am so good. I am like jazzed for this combo. I'm like, oof, let's get into it.
Confidence conversation. So, before we dive into all of the amazing work that you're doing at We the Light, what does confidence mean to you?
Oof, ooh, obsessed. For me, it really is embodied. For
Mhm,
me, it means knowing my truth, living my truth, um, allowing myself to take up space.
mhm.
And it's a genuine, for me, it's so internal. I
Yeah,
think so often, like we see in like media, and we talk about confidence being this external thing. And though I love that, though I love presentation and sometimes performing is uh, appropriate,
mhm.
I love, for me, the deep, real confidence is internal, that I'm self regulated, that I'm leading with my truth, that I'm just following that inner voice.
Yeah. And sometimes following that inner voice is so hard, our intuition, our gut, right? And
Yes.
like listening to ourselves. So, tell me about your journey to being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so scary because
Yeah.
I feel like this is a I'm going to butcher it, but there's a quote from A Course in Miracles, and it's the voice of the ego is a loud, thunderous roar, and the
Mhm.
voice of the soul slash spirit is a soft whisper.
Yeah.
And it's a soft whisper, and it's scary sometimes to trust the soft whisper. It's so easy and accessible to grab the low hanging fruit, and so I think for me there's been a big conversation around safety,
Mhm.
that it's safe to listen to myself, that I can trust myself. I think that's a big part of self-love that we don't talk about.
Mhm.
I think so often with self-love, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, it's like the sheet masks and the bubble bath. It's like love, like I'm all about that, let's do it. And a big piece of self-love is trusting. I could trust my intuition. It's safe to have a relationship, corny, but with my soul.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I define confidence is trust, a fundamental trust in who you are, where you are, and how you're doing. And when you have that trust in yourself, you're able to do anything. But you're right, it is hard to listen to that whisper, that still small voice, because we have society telling us what to do. And at the same time, we're in a day and an age where we're always seeking validation, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, whether it's the likes or views that we're getting on social media, or it's the desire for a pat on the back or a good job at work. Like, we're seeking in some ways that validation. So we're programmed almost to go outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And when that whisper in ourselves is so faint, and the voices that are loud are, you're not doing this right, or you did that good, but like, this is what you can do to do better or be better. That's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, like you said, it's so loud, it's so accessible. And
Mhm.
in a way, it's kind of attractive. Like it's enchanting because there's a part of us that's like, oh, well, I could better myself
Yeah.
from those voices. And it's like, there's a way to have self improvement or expansion that's not from a place of crucifixion,
Yeah.
you
So
know? Yeah.
the work that you do today was a journey basically of getting to know, familiarize yourself with, and then listen to that voice. So I want to know about your personal self-love journey and how you got to this place of personal acceptance.
Ooh, I love that. I was the opposite of this. And I always say this, like I would be so embarrassed, so cringe if I knew I was like if I was here today talking about confidence, sexual empowerment, I'd be like, "Oh no, not her. Like what are you doing?" Like I would be so embarrassed. Um because there was so much shame and self-hate,
Yeah.
and so much wrongness. So for me, I had no, like literally no intention or no conscious intention of doing this work.
Mhm.
I was on this journey quite literally to survive.
Yeah.
Like I was like, how I'm operating, this is like, there's no longevity in this. Like I can't. live a life through so much self-hate. Like, what are we doing here? And so for me, this was purely for myself. It started, there's a little bit of a side story there, but so much for myself. And then it like accidentally became for others, because I was like, oh, I felt like I had like a magic potion. I'm like, how can I not tell? Like, how could I keep this just with myself? So I started telling people. And then I was like, come on, universe, how did this turn into a business? So it was so accidental.
Yeah, your purpose will find you. It really
Mm-hmm.
will. I'm a science and number girl by nature. I worked in healthcare for all of my career. So to be sitting here having conversations about feelings, emotional, and like getting a little woo is
Yes.
far from like what I ever could have imagined, not even imagined for myself, because that would imply that like I even had knowledge of some of the things and concepts that I talk about today. But you mentioned that part of your journey, there was a side story. Can we get into that?
Please, yes. So Cliff Notes is I've always been attracted to the woo, but wouldn't have owned it. So when I was a kid, I loved the woo. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And then I was a little bit like shamed out of it, like you shouldn't like that. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Got it. But when I first started my business, pre all this, it was one of those like fall to your knees, come to Jesus type of things. I was dealing with an eating disorder, a breakup, 3 friends separately had passed, and my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So it just was like, you actually can't function. Like, this is so crazy. Like, this is insane. Um, so how it really started was technically my mom getting sick. I was like, I'm just gonna investigate holistic health. I'm just gonna investigate. And then it brought up so much with the self-hate, with the eating disorder. So I was simultaneously holding myself and my mom. So it was like, oh shoot, like this resonates for me. This really works for me. Oh mom, look at this. And so we were on the, like, I wrapped her into this journey, but we were both on that. And then from there, like I said, like I was like, how could I not share? So I would invite people to my apartment, not in a business sense, but I'm like, you got to hear this. Or like, I got to show you what I just learned, because it was just from a place of, I love you. I have to share this information with you. But this work really, honestly, started from some like deep shadow of like, we're in the stuff, we're in the mud. Yeah, like deep rupture.
And you like it's those moments of being broken open that, you know, I personally would not wish on my worst enemy, but would not trade for the world. And I think my journey started too of this like moment of literally being brought to my knees, not knowing what to do, and just being like, I need help. And the
Yeah.
form that help takes, or whatever I need to do, or whatever it looks like, I will do it. And that type of surrender is scary and intimidating, because like when you mean it,
Mm.
you know that anything is possible, and that part of what will be brought your way is some shit that you don't to do,
Mm-hmm.
won't want to deal with or want to bring up. And so it's difficult, but it's necessary if we're going to self-actualize.
Yeah, it's so, and I think that's so not discussed. Like, I
Yeah.
think that because this is an industry. And so I
Mhm.
think so often people buy into the, like, I always say this, like the white Mercedes of it all, like the manifestation and the sexiness of it, which hell yeah, there is space for that. But like
Mhm.
you said, we rub up against some edges that are awesome. Like, it brings us to more discovery and more possibilities, but there is sometimes like a ooh, like this, like, ooh, this is a crunchy.
You have to get rid of those internal blockages, like
Yes.
internal limiting systems that you have, any self-doubt, imposter syndrome. You have to be able to work through that and dispel that, and able to call abundance or anything into your life. And I think you're right. We often, sell this story of things are so great and will be so great, which is true. However, healing is a messy process oftentimes. And it's like, I describe it as like cleaning a room, like really cleaning a room. You've got to like pick stuff up. I would move the couch behind me around. It's got to become discombobulated so you can get into all of the nooks and the crannies and really clean up your space, and then put things back together, throw the stuff away that you didn't need, and bring in the new.
Yeah, I love that. Exactly. And they always say, like, to which you can own that swamp, or that like, ugh, that like mud, you can own that greatness. You can own that light. You can own, like, but so often it's the like, the expansion, the growth is what we talk about. Like, but you said that's how we get there. There's, what's the quote? There's no mud, no lotus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard that, but it's beautiful. And I want to talk about how you got to your lotus, how you got to your, because you went from sense of shame, this, eating disorder, to pleasure. And what does it feel like to be loved on and know what I like, to let me tell everybody else about this. So how did you get from where you were to where you are today with Wiederlight?
I love that. I was talking about this earlier, deep practice. And I feel like as a space holder, as a facilitator, it's going to be that for the rest of my life. We all fall out. We all are messy. But one of my core values is integrity. And so, like, how do I relentlessly, like they say in yoga, like, keep coming back to the mat? Like, how do I keep coming back to the mat, quote unquote, of my life? So, like, how do I keep, like, yes, I am LOL, but an expert, but like, what does that, like, how do I keep showing up and expanding and holding myself through growth? And so, relentless practice. And for me, that I had the privilege of, going to different coaches, getting trained, getting certified, relentlessly staying on this path. And one of my teachers, I don't know if this is her thing, but one of my teachers, Elizabeth D'Alto, or if it's Danielle Laporte's thing, but she says, at least I know Elizabeth says this, holy consistency. So I'm like, oof, that's so good, of like the discipline of, and the sexiest way possible, like the discipline of this work. Like, there's every excuse in the book, like, genuine, and there's every resistance in the book of, I don't need to do this. My life is fine. I'm okay. But me relentlessly coming back to my consistency, to my practice, to myself, to the internal, and that's getting really good at listening to the soft whisper versus the loud roar, which I do, but it's practice.
What was that first soft whisper to you in terms of like getting into the work of understanding and really giving yourself what you needed sexually?
Yes.
That's scary for a lot of women.
Oh yeah. That's such a good, that is so good. I think for my journey, and for so many of us, I have a performing background, so it makes sense. I was very, and also a lot of humans hold this, but performing background, had some issues with my body, feel like I had to overperform to get love. Like, there was a weird currency thing happening. And so being performative was so available for me. And like, when I was in my stuff, I was so not interested in what does Erica need? I'm like, yeah, okay, anyway. Like, I was like, that's nice. Like, I want to be chosen. So I had this story of like, I need to perform. I need to do, like, which is such a sticky road. And such, like, and I sometimes, honestly, I'm human. So sometimes it's still, I'm like, oh, that's interesting that you peaked up, So for me, the road was just what you said of like, what do I like? And not even sexually, sensually. I do this with my clients, is like, what do I like as a human? So I always say this, like, because we're so busy, it's so accessible for us to go on autopilot. You know what I mean? It's so accessible to be like, oh, every Tuesday I'm going to have the ham sandwich. Or when I drive, I always listen to this artist. It's like, cool. Love that. Like, is that your genuine truth right now? Like, do you actually want to eat a ham sandwich? It sounds so silly, but like, do you actually want to eat a ham sandwich or take it sexually? Like, do you like a strong grip, or do you right now need like a softer feather light touch? And we're
Mhm.
so disconnected to those needs that I'm like, let's just start with like food, you know, like what do you like to eat, or what type of sound do you like to hear? Like getting back to what's our truth.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, you know, the deal, it's like sex could be like, oh my gosh, I'm so triggered. This is so much. So I'm like, okay, let's like get back to like our five senses and what feels truthful for you right now in this moment.
I love that five senses approach, and because it really breaks things down, and you
Yeah.
don't feel necessarily comfortable to begin. You just have to learn to know yourself and be committed to being aware and being mindful. And I think that one of the things that I really like about what you said is the idea of breaking away from your habit. Because,
Mm,
and this is paraphrasing from St. Augustine, but habit not resisted becomes necessity.
mm,
Don't resist our habits, we do them like it's just a knee-jerk reaction. And so we get to a place where we're not even necessarily filling our cups up. We're not doing anything new or interesting. We're just doing what we've always done. And that's how life becomes mundane. That's
yes.
slowly but surely we become disconnected or disassociated from ourselves. And we stop understanding or even exploring what it is that we want or need because we don't ask the question. We don't know. We're not thinking about it because we do this at this time, at this place, at this space with this person. And so, really getting intentional about I'm here,
Mm,
this is how I feel. And based on how I feel, this is what I want, and this is what I need.
yes. Yeah. I love that. I was talking with a guest yesterday on my podcast and a friend, honestly, about this work. And I'm like, how do you stay committed to your pleasure practice? And that, you know, that sometimes could be so like elusive when people are like, oh, find your pleasure, find your joy. It's like, what does that mean? What does that
What is
mean?
it? What is, yeah.
Yeah, like what is that? And so she had a really beautiful explanation. But for her, it's being in the moment.
Mhm.
It's so easy to find radiance and aliveness when we get engaged, or you know, like if those big, or when we travel to the Amalfi Coast, like easy, accessible, love that. But what is it like to find aliveness, magic when you're cleaning the dishes? You
Mhm.
know, like what is that? And I think that's truly boil all of this down. It's kind of funny, like we said, that it's so much of this work is consciousness, mindfulness, being in the now. You know what I mean? When we really boil a lot of these practices down, it's being grounded in the here and now and being grounded in the present moment.
And the present moment is the only moment. I don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen seconds from now, let
Yeah.
alone tomorrow, let alone next year. And I'm
Yeah.
sure like anyone listening or even you could relate to the fact that didn't know I'd be here right now.
Right.
You do. And
Right.
think that we can put aside or put off happiness to this date in the future of, when I accomplish this goal or when I do this or when I do that, for there to be happiness or for there to be pleasure is really denying ourselves a life well lived, because
Yes.
the only moment is the present moment. So just coming back constantly to what can I do now? What can I control? And again, what do I want? And I think as women, we don't ask ourselves what we want enough. We identify what we need, like we're
Yeah.
very practical creatures, but what we want, we don't talk about that, whether it's just from a standpoint of I want a vacation and I may
Yeah.
need, or I would like a chocolate bar too. I would like to have the best orgasm of my life. We don't talk about that. And
Yeah.
so I want to start to talk about kind of the work that you do because there's so much stigma around
Yes.
women and our bodies and what we do about our bodies and what we say about our bodies or what we're doing with a partner or whomever. What kind of pushback have you gotten being in this industry and being so vocal about your work?
Oof, that's such a good question. And honestly, I have to sometimes like self-resource, self-regulate,
Mhm.
because I know when people are going to come at it. Listen, it's I'm down for people's resistance. That's part of my job as a facilitator, to be like, I see you in your resistance. Yep, I'm with you. I got you. Let's go. Um, but then there's a place of like judgment, and I'm not engaging in this. So I have to kind of do a little bit of a dance, if that makes sense. You know, like when is someone like, I'm going to give you resistance, but like I'm down to play, versus like something else.
What do you think is the
Yeah.
source of that resistance? So when people, you know, legitimately are like, you shouldn't be talking about that, or how dare you? What do you
Yes.
think of, for me, but you're the expert, a lot of it comes from, you know, maybe we're holding back ourselves. And so because I'm not personally liberated or comfortable talking about something, I don't want you to address it either, but I would love to hear where you think that stems from.
Yes, exactly. Totally that. I think there is so much cultural shame
Mhm.
and wrongness. And it could be an assortment of reasons, right? There could be like, don't do that. That's wrong. That's bad. Judgment feels safe. Also, sometimes people are coming from a place of trauma. Like, that's triggering me. So, and there's not a lot of safe conversations
Yeah.
in this realm. You know what I mean? So and I was saying this earlier to someone else about, mm, in a way, in a safe way, to the best of my ability, I like that this work could be provocative, not that type of provocative. I like when it's safe, when it's appropriate, of course, saying, oh, I'm a sexual empowerment coach, because how someone reacts, which is cool, you get right away, the healing begins,
Yeah.
because you get a gauge of where you're at, like, what? Or like, oh, this is, because everyone's like, what do you like, what does that mean? And I'm like, it means so many different things. Like, it could mean orgasm, it could mean I hate my body, or it
Yeah.
could mean, you know, like there's so many different entry points. But why I like the provocative nature of it is, for me, I've done spiritual work basically my whole life, and the sexual realm was so potent for me, because I couldn't run, I couldn't really bypass. Everything lovingly was like in my face, like, ooh, you're holding these beliefs about yourself, or like it just was really, it was really there. But to circle back, I think we're, there's so many layers, right? Like I said, it could be trauma, it could be conditioning. There's also so much shame.
Yeah.
Like, there is so much shame, and for so many folks, especially women, there we have this like Madonna slash whore complex within us, like, right, like we're polarized or taught, be one or the other. Be a good girl, put your head down, be good, or you're messy, gross, lazy, you know, like it's, and so that's there's deep conditioning, cultural, religious, within us. So I think it's a lot, you know, and that's part of the work, just like to process that.
It is a lot. And I want to talk about the shame,
Yeah.
because it comes in at different avenues and different places and spaces for all of us, whether it's I'm too big or I'm too small. I wish I looked like this. I wish my hair was longer, or I don't have, or like whatever it is about
Yeah.
our sexual experiences. There's some area at some point in life that we've experienced shame, or maybe have not been at our most confident. And so when we feel those feelings arise, whatever they may be, what are some of the things that we can talk through or tell ourselves to feel a bit better in the moment?
I love that. I think that you actually nailed it. It's like, as I drop my mic, it's the it's the finding the rightness within ourselves. I think we're so taught to find what's wrong, what's bad, what's shameful. And a big part of my work is celebration. And so I have my clients celebrate every day. And they're like, I have nothing to celebrate. It was a normal day. I'm like, right. Like, we live, like, most of our life is the mundane, like you said. So it's like, how can we find a baby celebration today? How can we find our rightness? I have a mirror exercise that so many people know. And essentially, every time you see a mirror or a reflective surface, it's a reminder of, I have to find my beauty. And we're so used to picking ourselves apart. And so my invitation is, how can we, almost like childlike wonder, find our beauty. Because sometimes people do the exercise like, I did it, like I found it, I like, I like this about myself, cool. I'm like, great, okay, now we're at the next level of almost like if you were a child, like getting so lost in like, oh, I love the crease in my finger, like my ring finger, like that level of awe, like we are a piece of art, if that makes sense. So it's I think there's celebration.
That's self-intimacy. And I think that that's so
Yes.
being able to appreciate, admire, and look within in that way. And I think that, you nailed it. Too often we're looking for things to pick apart, but why not look for things to love? Like our bodies do so much for us on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
Start there. I love my body for breathing. I'm so grateful that I can breathe. I'm grateful that I can digest my food. I'm grateful for the head on my head and my mobility, just tuning into what you can do and then how you feel is a good place to start. And then you can kind of grow your appreciation from there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so often in this climate, and I always say this, I'm thrilled that we're having this conversation. I'm thrilled that people are talking about self-love, but sometimes it's again, like, what does that mean? And I think you voiced something really beautiful of like, let's start with the neutrality or even the celebration. Like my body just processed that food without me thinking about it. I'm speaking and taking this breath without, you know what I mean? Like there's so much relentless miracles that happen without us even being conscious of it. And so I love that you voiced that of like, how can we start to notice that? How can we get behind that? And then we could talk about, do I like my eyelashes? You know what I mean? I'm like, hold on, let's just like talk about, and like, this is a miraculous thing that's happening moment to moment. Let's like just be in awe of that. And then we could talk about all the other stuff.
And we talked about manifestation earlier. And the truth of the matter is we get more of what we're grateful for. So if we're able to be grateful for our bodies just functioning properly, then we're calling into our lives abundant health. Yes. If we're able to appreciate the crease in our fingers, then we're calling into our life beauty. Just by appreciating those little things, we're able to notice and draw in more of that to us. And I want to talk to you now, switching gears a little bit, about appreciating sex and intimacy, diving right into some of the more, I don't want to say more interesting parts of what you do, because it's not, all of it is interesting and important, but like, let's talk about sex, baby.
Yes, I'm excited.
So what can we do to get ourselves more comfortable with vocalizing our wants and needs with our partners? Because, we hear all the time people say, the best orgasm I've ever had was with myself. How do we change that and actually ask for what we want?
Love. Okay. I think this is a two-parter. And I think the first part, even if we feel well educated, well, like we know ourselves well, I think there's always room for self-discovery. And whether you're partnered, whether you're single, whether you have multiple partners, I don't care. I think there's room for a self-pleasure practice. So which holds as just as much important as your meditation practice or your yoga practice or your affirmations, whatever it is. And why I say that, I mean, we could really go off on a tangent there, but why that's important is so often we don't even know. I just led an exercise last night, and it's a more pleasure focused container. And it was, people were doing body stroking, and that could be their arms, their breasts, their face, whatever. And I said, listen, I know there's this want to just like go there and get it right and do the things, but sometimes your body doesn't want that. Like, do you know, like sometimes we're like, oh, I feel like I should like masturbate or like do that. Like, does your body actually want that? So really having a relationship, knowing what our body wants, it sounds so stereotypical, but there really is truth. Like, again, today, am I wanting, that's why I love these fake nails. Like, do I want a scratch? Do I want a feather touch? Am I feeling like, ooh, I feel ungrounded today, I want more of a grab. Like, there is so much power in having our own self pleasure practice to
Mhm.
know, like, what the hell do I actually even like? What feels good for me? There's I always call her out because she's great. Her name is Jaya. And she does, and there's so many amazing sex educators, but she's just coming to mind right now. And she has a blueprints, and it's like she has a course, but there's a free quiz. And essentially, how she breaks it up, and I'm not affiliated to her work, so I'm not going to. I'll speak to which I know. We all carry different blueprints. It's kind of like the love languages of sex.
Mhm.
And why I think that's so powerful to take that free quiz, or $7 quiz, whatever it is we know, like, oh shoot, like there's so much information. And so often we like play on the surface with sexuality. We're like, I'm gonna have an orgasm, I'm gonna have sex, like hot, love that. But like there's so much more. Like there's so much more available for us, for our growth, for our knowing about ourselves. Um, yeah, so starting with that, like, what is your pleasure practice? Like, does it today feel really good to light the candles and listen to, like slow, beautiful music? Or today you're feeling like, ooh, I want something, like, I want this, like getting in touch with like, what flavors do I like and do I want? That really is so connected to having the confidence to speak what we want, because we know it. It's like resource. We're like, boom, today I want the music and I want the candles. But when we don't, when it's like on rocky waters, we're like, can I have, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's like, is this weird? Like, is this bizarre? So like part of that's why the pleasure practice is so empowering, because we know exactly what we want. And with that being said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfectly evolved. And if you are in partnership, you could, this is super vulnerable, and you could share, I'm feeling really vulnerable right now, I feel embarrassed, all my stuff around sex and shame is coming up. An exercise that I sometimes people play is like, I'm going to set a timer for, in partnership, for 7 minutes with consent, of course, for whatever you want. And
Mhm.
someone may want something really boom, or someone might be like, can you just like literally take a feather and stroke the back of my neck?
Mhm.
So like that, normalizing so often in relationships, there's like no communication around it. It's just like, take off your clothes, go right to it. And it's great, great. But that's like literally one letter out of the whole alphabet.
Yeah.
Like, well, and we love that letter. That's a great letter. It's what's one key. Like, that's great. We love it. We can keep playing it. There's room for it. There's space for it. But like, there's a whole tons of other letters that could be played. There's tons of other textures and places that we could lean into that is so nourishing. So I
And I
guess,
think that's
yeah.
why it's so important to start with that self-intimacy, like you said. And it's
Yes.
not just the masturbation piece, it's understanding, who am I? What do I like? Because
Yes.
like some people swear by it and other people don't want to do that at all. And like whatever is your flavor, I think is fine. But
Yeah.
like understanding what it is that you as a human being want and feel comfortable with, and then making sure that you are in a safe space.
Yes.
To we cannot pressure ourselves to feel comfortable around a certain person or to do certain things. And I think that's a huge part of it too, is like listen to your gut,
Yes.
period. And if your gut is telling you, yes, I do want pleasure in this moment, but I'm not so comfortable with this person, listen to that. Like there's a reason for that. And I think that oftentimes when we hear the word intimacy, we automatically equate it to sex, but intimacy is so much bigger than that. I think intimacy is a deep knowing, understanding, appreciation, and like opening the space to really get to understand and feel something, whether
Yeah.
that's fine, whether that's a deep conversation. Like there's a wide range of what intimacy can be.
Love that. I really quickly want to give like a baby story of like jade eggs, yoni eggs, if anyone's ever heard of those. They're essentially crystal, crystal eggs they could potentially for healing. And sometimes I jam out with them. Sometimes like it's not my jam, and I know that about myself. Like sometimes I'm like, cool. Sometimes it's not for me. But something that I really got while taking a training for jade eggs, that was like, boom, I got it. This was the most powerful thing in the course. Was our teacher was saying, so often people are like, I need the healing, like I need to heal my relationship with my vulva, and I'm going to like put it in like, oh. And so she would always suggest like, can you just put the egg by your body, like by your leg? Does it want it today or does it not? And I was like, oh my God, that's so permission giving, especially in partnership where you're like, well, the other person wants it today, so I guess I have to. And it's like, whoa, like what actually do I need? Like, what do I want? What would, so I love the example of the jade egg, because would it feel safe to have this like in me, by me? Like, and I love that it's like, I'm going to take a pulse and be like, it's a no, or it's a yes, but it needs to look like this. And I think why that's important again is with partnership and how we can communicate that.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why it can be difficult to talk about that is because we're taught so many things. One, you're taught, don't do it. If you do it, people will call you names. And then we get past that. And then it's, well, you can't say what you want, because if you do, you look, like a whore, whatever word people want to throw out there. And then it's, okay, I'm comfortable, but how much is too much? Or what can I like? What can I give myself permission to do? And I think listen to your body in the moment. It comes back to that present moment, mindfulness and awareness and intentionality behind your actions and why you're doing something. Because before we can get to the what, like what are we doing? Why are you doing something in the first place? And getting to that, you can understand the what. Once you understand the what, you can get to the how. Once you understand the how, you can get to the how much.
Yes.
So like, why? Like, why do we want it? And so I'd love to talk to you, kind of switching gears a bit, about some of the common, maybe insecurities or issues that you help your clients through, because there's a broad range, and we've spoken about this, of insecurities and doubts that people have. So I would love for you to give us one or two of them, and then some frameworks to how we can work through them.
Love. Yeah, I'm always, and I actually just was, again, talking about this recently. There's a little bit of a delusion in our society, quite honestly, that it's getting better, but how do I want to phrase this? That so often, so many of us suffer alone. And we feel like only I am like in a mental health journey or growth journey. And we so often think like, oh, this person that has all the things doesn't struggle. And I want to normalize that everyone has mental health. It's just, do we want to do the dance? And there's no shade if you're not ready, but like, do you want to do it's a relationship. Like, do you want to grow this relationship? And so why I say that is so often I see clients be like, well, but if I looked like this, or if I had the white Mercedes, or if I was 15 pounds lighter, I wouldn't have these problems. And I'm like, oh, like there's something, I just wanted to normalize that like we all have our things.
And also, when you have the white Mercedes, or when you work on your body to look whatever way is in your head, right? Something else will be the problem. Which is so important to look within and start there and be like, why does this problem exist in the first place? Because if you don't dig that weed up from the root, it will continue to grow. And so that is spot on. And it's also such a myth that like, once I get here, this will go away. It's like switching jobs every couple of years, which I used to do. And I'm like, no, I'm the problem here. I actually don't like working in corporate America. So I should remove myself. And once you realize that, you can grow and you can thrive. But like understanding what is the issue,
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it here?
Yeah.
And deal with that. Not, oh, once I get that, no, you're carrying the same person, the same body, the same beliefs into the white Mercedes.
Yep. Yep. It's so true. And right. And there's an opportunity. There's a door open for one foot in desire land, but it's how we dance with desires. Like, why do you, and if you're just like, I think there's room for investigation and curiosity. Like, why do I want the white Mercedes? Is it because it feels so juicy and amazing? Or is it because I think I'll be rich and then all my problems will go away? Like,
Yeah.
I think, and it's okay. Like, sometimes it's okay if we approach things from a crunchy place, but I think having the curiosity of, like you said so beautifully, like the why. So circling it back, like, we all have something, we all have the things, and like, we have got to get it to the root. I see often a lot of body stuff. There's a general sense of wrongness. So whether it's not body, it's my mind is wrong, my thoughts are wrong. Like, there's wrongness. And for me, like I said, a big tool is celebration. A big tool that I want to talk about really briefly is the idea of checking in with your pleasure, and your daily pleasure. So what I do is I have people check in. I'm a big fan of setting alarms because I literally won't do it then. And it just says pleasure. And when that alarm goes off, I just check, like, if it's a spectrum, am I feeling crunchy and contracted, or am I feeling turned on? And turned on means what we talked about. Like, am I present? Am I kind of alive to my senses? Like, where am I on the scale? And if we're crunchy, cool. But like, you don't need to be a 10, but how, like, a barometer can we up that little scale? Like, how can we take it like half an inch? And it takes us out of I hate using this word because I think there's an absolutely appropriate time when people are victims. Like, so I hate, disclaimer, like, that's absolutely appropriate sometimes. But what I mean when I say victim is victim of our own life. Like, when we're doing the self punishment behavior, it takes us out of that victim mentality, and it's like, oh shoot, like, I have more agency than I thought. I have more room to do some things than I thought. So for me, that pleasure work, and I'll give a baby silly example. Pretend someone's working from home and they're crunched over the computer and they're like, bleh, and the alarm goes off and they're like, oh shoot, where am I at? Oh, okay, I'm totally in a contraction. That's cool. What do I need? Well, I can't say F work and go get a massage. Like, unfortunately, that's not sometimes how society works. Sometimes it is, which is great. But okay, how can I add 1% more pleasure? You know what? I'm going to put on my favorite Spotify playlist. I'm going to take a 2-second walk around to my kitchen and make myself a cup of tea. And I'm still going to work. We're not like making, we're still doing the responsibilities. We're still getting back to the mundane. But how can I come and bring my aliveness, my power, my magic back to the situation? So for me, that's been great because I also get to check myself of like, oh, I went unconscious, like, lovingly. Oh, I went unconscious there. Oh, I got lost into the negativity of that. Oh, I kind of liked that. Like, oh, I liked being my sorrow for a second, and that's okay. That's cool. But like, okay, how do you come back? Like, it's a great tool of coming back.
Yeah, I love that. And I really want to talk about that 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I love James Clear's Atomic Habits talking about like being 1% better, but like we can apply that not just to our habits or how to reach our goals, but literally in how do I make this situation in my office, which is where I am right now, 1% better.
Yes.
To like set the alarms, like you said, and do those check-ins of like, it doesn't, maybe it's like a 10, 20, 30%. Like if I'm going to get a massage, like I'm feeling a lot better. And like,
Yes.
part of my we're thinking of outer self-care, but we cannot always do that. But there are those micro changes. And if we focus in on the 1% and we do that more often, especially when we're not feeling our best every single day, it's not like, I'm going to wait to go on this vacation, I'm going to feel great. Okay, yes, that's true. But like the tea, the lighting, the I can't, maybe it's walking outside and going for a walk, but maybe I have a meeting in 5 minutes. So I walk around my home and stare out the window and like view nature in that way. 1% doesn't
Yep.
have this big, huge thing. What can I do to bring 1% more joy, 1% more pleasure, 1% more peace into my life right here, right now?
Yeah. I had yesterday, my friend and the guest on my show, we were talking, and she was saying like how we love getting on the exterior of the pleasure, which again, there's a place for it, right? Like you said, the massage, it's absolutely appropriate sometimes. And also sometimes it feels disempowering because we're like, wait, that's not always accessible. And she was like, what would it be like if you, and I tried doing this morning, like genuinely felt the trickle of the water in the shower. Like if you trace that one, like it's that, right? And I think so often like pleasure feels so disempowering because it feels like, oh my gosh, how, I can't go to Hawaii every week. You know what I mean? Like I can't like
abstract thing.
Yes. Yes. And it's like, how do we make this aliveness online consistently? Even now, like we're having this conversation, I'm noticing like, oh, I'm sitting in a way that's actually not supporting me. Okay, literally my 1% is I just need to adjust, or as we talk, I need to do a hip circle, or I'm gonna take a sip of water. You know, like it doesn't need to be like, yeah.
And we can always be making our lives 1% better. And I want to hear about some of the self-care practices that you do on a day-to-day basis. So walk me through like a day in the life. What are you doing when you do those self-assessments and you set your alarm and you are feeling crunchy? What does Erica do?
Love. I really try to, and again, I waver, we're human, to have that holy consistency and to have that daily practice. Sometimes it's not glamorous. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes if I have a privilege of longer, great. But doing that practice every day, whether it's movement, whether it's my mindset, like I try to do something to get back to my soul. Cause you know the deal, the minute the day starts, it's so easy to be like, I lost it. It's gone. Like it's gone. It's out there. So I always try to do some form of daily practice. With that being said, and this has been such a like the best discovery for me is I remember when I first started doing this work, I was like, oh, cool. Like I'm going to do the pleasure work. And then I am going to be on a pink cloud for the rest of my life, being feathered and being, someone's going to give me grapes. And I was like, oh, LOL. Like I didn't realize that this is relentless. Like I am going, and I didn't realize. And what's been so cool is like, oh, I have a lot of cap on pleasure because I don't feel there's little creaky spots where I don't feel worthy of it. I don't feel deserving of it. It feels like, all right, Erica, that's too much. So honestly, I am consistently, like I feel proud of myself that I got to one level and I was like, yeah. And I got to the next level and I was like, yeah. But I'm consistently trying to up my game because I hit those glass ceilings all the time.
All the time, like even in this conversation, right? Confidence conversations, I find myself in like, oh, did I just ask that? Because I am not the girl that's like, I'm the person who's like not really talking about sex. I may say a couple things to my friends, but like I'm like just here in the little box and like, I may say a couple things to my man, but like that's about it.
Yes.
It doesn't go further than that. And so like even and because I talk about confidence as a journey and not a destination, and it's something that you constantly have to cultivate in like all aspects of life. And so just because you're doing well here doesn't mean it's there. And it's the same with like the pleasure principle. It's where do I feel unconfident or unworthy?
Yeah.
How can I give myself access to that pleasure or confidence? And kind of give myself grace and work from there. So you've given us so many gems today. What final words of wisdom can you impart on us?
Ooh, I love this. Oh, this is so good. Okay, great. Just because this is top of mind, and apparently so is my mic. I love dropping my mic today. This is top of mind because I just had this conversation with my friend. The last little gem is, like we said, we're not promised even our next breath. We we sometimes are delusioned and disillusioned that, oh, I will be happy when, like we talked about, I'll have the pleasure when. There are no guarantees, unfortunately. There are no promises. And so I think getting really sober around that is actually beautiful. So my last little yummy takeaway is, oof, that could be triggering, like, oh my gosh. But it's also like, wait, this is so beautiful, because then I get to play each moment. And I'm not saying that hard stuff doesn't come up. I'm not saying, this is of course situational, and have circumstances, but it allows us to come on board with, here I am right here, right now, washing these dishes, instead of being like, I absolutely hate this, I can't wait in 3 weeks when I go to my cruise. Like, no, like, how can I really be present and jam with the here and now? I think when we remember that nothing is guaranteed, nothing is promised, we're more down to fight the good fight for, like, I'm in this moment right now, and to the best that it could be, I'm going to jam. I'm going to jam. I'm going to jam. And so my permission slip to everyone is, cool. How do you want to play that? Like, how do you want to start to invite that? And we're human. It might only be 3 seconds a day, and then we go back to the stuff. That's cool. But my permission slip for everyone listening is, how do you want to take that with you? How do you want to be more the corny, but be more the author of your own life, and be like, yeah, like, I am consistently, to the best of my ability, with what I got, cultivating joy, pleasure, radiance, fun.
I love that. A permission slip, essentially, to live authentically.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.